This is where it gets into corporate politics. You have to be able to play the game. Hello everyone, I'm Seth, this is Acquired Salary. In today's video, I'm going to discuss the trend of a rising hesitancy in hiring Gen Z, or the trend of firing them within mere months of hiring them. There are a ton of reasons why, which I'll cover today, but stick around to the end to see what the stats are and how to overcome them. And before we get into it, if you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. With that, let's jump things off with a self-incriminating behavioral anecdote as to why Gen Z is getting fired.
Part 2, and the last part of how I got fired 3 times from 3 different companies and how they were all my fault. After I got my accounting diploma, I worked 2 back-to-back accounting roles for 2 different companies, and I got fired from both of them within the same year. My first accounting role, I got in so much shit for being on my phone all the time because the role was just so boring.
If you don't enjoy the role, maybe you shouldn't have accepted it in the first place. But from that standpoint, I understand everybody needs a job. However, you probably shouldn't be on your phone all the time at work. I think that's just normal professionalism. And this is indicating that Gen Z, or at least she, doesn't know how to act professional in a professional workplace.
The company culture also sucked because there were so many snitches. Literally random people would walk by my desk and tell management anytime I was on my phone. Obviously, after my first warning, I didn't go on my phone as much, and people would still snitch on me if I was doing something as little as changing the song or changing the podcast that I was listening to.
From that standpoint, if you're listening to music or podcasts, you can probably download the app that you're listening to music or podcasts on, if you're using Spotify, for example, to your desktop or to your laptop so that you don't have to get on your phone to do that, especially if this is becoming a problem and so-called snitches are, ratting on you and telling your manager that you're not doing work, you're on your phone all the time. Well, maybe do some creative problem solving, not even that creative of problem solving, but, logical problem solving, and move to having that stuff on your desktop so it doesn't look like you're on your phone all the time. I think that's a pretty simple solution, but let's continue.
It got so bad that management physically moved my desk to be in front of her desk so she could watch and make sure that I wasn't on my phone. She would have rather that I just click around the screen on my computer if I ran out of work and after I reviewed everything already. They were also so clicky, I hate.
From that standpoint, obviously, in professional workplaces, you're not always going to have work to do, but this is where you can set yourself apart by taking initiative and finding additional things to do so that you can get more work done and really set yourself apart as a high achiever and demonstrate that you have some initiative to providing value to the company. So I think, that's one quick and easy solution to, not just twiddling your thumbs while you're at work.
Hated going to lunch, and it was such a high school vibe because management would literally be that group of girls that would whisper among each other and point and laugh. Anyway, that made me realize I didn't like being micromanaged, so I didn't really care about getting fired from there. Plus, they were barely paying me anything.
From that standpoint, you're probably not being micromanaged, and if you are being micromanaged, it's perhaps because your employer doesn't trust you. I wonder why the employer doesn't trust you, because all kinds of employees are saying you're being on your phone all the time. So yeah, they're going to micromanage you until you can demonstrate the fact that you're competent and act in a professional manner and you're not on your phone all the time. It's kind of self-explanatory. It's a give and take. You got to, instill confidence in your manager that you're going to get your work done and do it well. And even if it is just busy work or pseudo looking busy, that's something that's important to management, especially if you're in an office setting.
In the next accounting role, this girl that was the all-star employee just had it out for me. A recruiter got me that job and I didn't have any problems. He only said that it was 8-hour days and I could start anytime between 6 and 9. I was like, okay, cool, and I did my job, and then halfway into my contract on Black Friday, my recruiter visited me to let me know that he talked to HR and HR thinks that I'm doing a really good job. He was like, keep up the good work, reward yourself with some Good Friday shopping today, and I did. In the middle of me shopping, I was at checkout, the HR of that company called me and was like, yeah, we're gonna have to let you go. He was mad about it too. He was like, don't bother coming in to get your stuff, we'll get it mailed to you. And I was
Were you on your phone shopping or were you on your laptop shopping? Obviously, if you're on your laptop shopping, yeah, that's maybe not the best thing to be doing, but it beats being on your phone. Still, it sounds like you were in a remote setting at that point in time. And of course, there's always going to be mixed messaging. And I think there's a little bit of additional insight that she's going to talk about right here.
I was like, what happened? And apparently the all-star employee was talking mad shit about me, saying that I was coming in whenever I felt like it, and that I thought I was too good for everyone because I didn't like to interact with people.
I was depressed and I hate accounting, and she constantly talked down to me and my skills and my looks. Okay, from that standpoint, this is where it gets into corporate politics. You have to be able to play the game. You have to be able to build relationships and get on the good side of people that can, have a significant impact on whether you remain employed or not, which this all-star employee, by the sounds of it, had a really good impact on the manager and creating a reluctance to keeping you employed. So from that standpoint, this is a learning lesson of it's important to build a positive reputation. Don't be the person known as, oh, come in at random times, come and go as you please, or anything along those lines. And then from that standpoint, if you work in the accounting field, you probably shouldn't talk about how you hate the accounting field all the time. That doesn't reflect well on your motivations for being at the company, which obviously people have different opinions on how important company culture is and the desire to be at a company. But you want to not just demonstrate that you're here only for the money.
No, it was just her. I didn't like interacting with her because she was always such a bitch to me. She didn't know the terms of my contract regarding the hours, so she made it sound like I was literally just coming and going whenever I felt like it. Anyway, I didn't want to fight it because I didn't like that company either, and I just hate doing accounting. And this was the actual getting fired moment that actually messed me up because I was completely blindsided that I literally left the store without paying. Obviously, I went back and paid for it after the employees chased me down, but they were very sympathetic because they could see on my face that I was in complete disbelief. Anyway, I'm not like that.
Okay, this makes it sound even worse. You were technically working, but you were at a store shopping. That's maybe not the best move to be making, especially at a relatively new job.
Anymore, and I actually straightened up and I started working an accounting role again for this really big bank, and they actually had insane training. I like the training, but I hate accounting, so it was actually me that made the decision to leave this time.
Again, this is just indicating that you probably got the wrong degree, especially if your degree is in accounting and you don't really enjoy accounting. This is unfortunate because it's going to be more difficult to make a pivot, especially with this video being out publicly on the internet and it demonstrating you don't necessarily have the best work ethic, or at least that's how many employers can interpret it.
Now I've been at my job at this investment firm for the last 3 years now, but moral of the story is, if you're an adult like me that had to learn responsibility at a later age, don't be ashamed of it. It comes eventually, or it's forced to come out in dire situations when you need to be responsible.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the biggest things that we're going to see in the stats is the hiring managers and the employers don't think the younger generation is very responsible, which makes it very difficult to get hired. So let's dive into some of the stats around employees and specifically Gen Z getting hired or being having a difficult time finding jobs. So here, Intelligent talks about 1 in 6 companies are hesitant to hire recent college graduates. As we look into some of the key stats that they're going to highlight, 75% of companies report that some or all of recent college graduates they hired this year were unsatisfactory. Well, if you demonstrate some of the behaviors that TikTok just demonstrated, yeah, it's going to be kind of understandable that they're unsatisfied with how you're acting in an unprofessional manner, being on your phone, and not playing well with others. If the important thing is when you're at work, you're all trying to accomplish a goal for the company. And so it makes it much easier if you can get along with your coworkers. 6 in 10 companies fired a recent college graduate they hired this year. That doesn't bode well. Again, it's tainting it's creating biases in employers to where they're going to be more reluctant to hire other Gen Z graduates and people from Gen Z just because in their experience, the majority of them don't have the proper work ethic or professionalism to function well in the workforce. 1 in 6 hiring managers say they are hesitant to hire from this cohort. So again, 1 in 6 based off of anecdotal experiences of 6 in 10 being unsatisfactory. That makes sense. Hiring managers say recent college grads are unprepared for the workforce, can't handle the workload, and are unprofessional. Again, this is kind of what I've been harping on. When you're starting a new job, it's always important to put your best foot forward and act in a professional manner, and it's important to continue to act in a professional manner because that's the setting that you're in. And then 1 in 7 companies may refrain from hiring recent college graduates next year. This makes sense, again, as hiring managers are becoming hesitant to hire from the cohort, and just anecdotal experience is not being positive. It's going to make it more difficult for the younger generation to find jobs. And then 9 in 10 hiring managers say recent college graduates should undergo etiquette training. From that standpoint, this is potentially a gap in college education, not teaching students proper etiquette in a professional workplace. However, if colleges aren't teaching it, and you want to hire from the workforce because they're going to be something like 30% of the workforce in the next couple of years, you should probably take responsibility as the company or the hiring manager to teach that etiquette. Obviously, it feels a little bit hand-holdy if you've been in the professional workplace for a while and you know how to act. But again, if you want to increase the pool of candidates that you can hire from and be successful, take the responsibility and train the etiquette. So 3 in 4 companies report issues with recent grad hires. So this year, 94% of companies report hiring recent college graduates. Among those, only 25% state that all recent college graduate hires worked out well, while 62% mention only some were successful. Further, 14% only a few or none of the hires were successful. Again, it's a dichotomy. There's obviously the responsibility that the Gen Z hire has to take to make sure that they are successful for the company, but then also it comes down to your systems as a company and a hiring manager. If every hire you make from Gen Z is not being successful, then you as a company are not providing them the tools that they need to be successful. That's kind of how I would like to look at it as a business owner. Let's continue to look down here. So 6 in 10 companies had to fire a recent college grad. Majority of companies, 79%, report that they had to place at least some of these underperforming hires on performance improvement plans, and 60% report they were eventually fired. From that standpoint, anytime you get a performance improvement plan as an individual, you should just take that as your informal 2 weeks notice that you're going to be fired, or whatever the performance improvement plan timeline is. You should probably start looking for a job if you're put on a PIP, because there's obviously a mismatch in expectations, which potentially indicates that as a company you have a flawed hiring process, because that's one of the key things to make a good hire, is that your expectations of the role are in line with the candidate's expectations for the role. But that's neither here nor there. Moving on. More than half of hiring managers say recent grads are unprepared for the workforce. This is, again, something that has been touted, and it's kind of a rising issue with colleges continuing to increase their costs but not increase the value or preparedness for the professional workplace. Nearly 2/3, 65% of hiring managers surveyed believe that recent college graduates are entitled, and 63% think they get offended too easily. Additionally, more than half, 55%, believe they lack work ethic, and 54% say they don't respond well to feedback. Similarly, 53% feel that Gen Z college graduates are unprepared for the workforce and believe they have poor communication skills. From that standpoint, the younger generation has a different communication style, and that's something that you're just going to have to learn and understand. However, you still have to be able to reframe it and teach them proper etiquette and give them kind of a guide on how to communicate properly in the professional workforce. From the standpoint of recent college graduates being entitled, yes, they're probably going to be entitled because they have to. There has been credential inflation in recent years where now jobs that never required a college degree and have not had increases in responsibility to where they would need a college degree to be competent at the role now require a college degree. And colleges are increasing their prices and far outpacing inflation. From the 70s, the inflation-adjusted cost of college has doubled, yet the salaries of entry-level jobs has not. So from that standpoint, there is going to be some sense of entitlement, but this is because the status quo has not kept up in terms of productivity being rewarded commensurate with proper salary increases. And again, I've talked about this in other videos. And still, in terms of getting offended too easily, that's kind of the role of HR, where they're going to go to HR, and that can kind of, HR isn't necessarily your friend. So if you do have a problem and you get offended easily, you can end up putting a target on your back if you go to HR over some things. But every company has HR, trainings about harassment and those sorts of things. So there's obviously a lot of data on what's going on, but from that standpoint here, again, another article, college doesn't teach you. It's worth noting that Gen Z college graduates in the workplace and Gen Z employees in general, this raises an interesting question. What's missing in higher education that has left so many graduates ill-equipped for the real world? What's missing is the focus on building human skills, interpersonal communication, conflict resolution, critical reasoning, and the ability to distinguish fact from opinion. Again, this is all kind of focusing on communication in terms of, critical reasoning, that's a different skill, but interpersonal communication, conflict resolution, distinguishing fact from opinion, this is all understanding communication and language, which again, if you're going to school for a technical role, the colleges are going to focus on the technical aspects of that role, not necessarily the communication aspects, which is where, as a company, you can derive benefit from etiquette training and communication training. And overall, from that standpoint, there is, I can't remember if it's on this article, let's see here, after completing better part of 2, difficult to work with, bosses no longer all talk, no action. Bosses are no longer all talk, no action. Now they're rapidly firing young workers who aren't up to scratch just months after hiring them. Again, it depends on the role. Is it a role where the skills to be competent at the job take multiple months? If so, then they might be jumping the gun. If it's a role where it should be, 2-3 weeks, maybe a month of training before they're competent, yeah, that's understandable that you're firing them after a few months. According to a new report, 6 in 10 employers say they have already sacked some of the Gen Z workers they hired fresh out of college earlier this year. Okay, here. Employers gripe that young people today lack motivation or initiative, 50%. Again, this is what I talked about at the very beginning of the video. If you don't have work, go to your manager, ask, what else can you do? How else can you add value? Or from that standpoint, it would be even better if you can identify a project or some tasks that you could get done and run it by your manager. Like, hey, I'm kind of running out of work here. I was thinking I can maybe work on this. Does that work for you? And then, yeah, I'm not going to be able to find it, but from that standpoint, the communication gap between older employees and managers is quite large, because I think it was in this article I wrote a while ago, 40% of respondents say their employer is not transparent or open when communicating with staff. So from that standpoint, if the older employees and employers are saying, hey, the younger generation doesn't have great communication skills, yet the younger generation is saying that senior leadership doesn't have great communication skills, there's obviously a gap in communication that could be filled by doing communication trainings. So I think that's one of the key things to take into consideration in being able to act professional. Overall, what do you think? Please share your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. And if you've made it this far into the video, you may as well subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future videos just like this one. And since you made it this far, please drop a like on the video. It's support like this that helps to grow Acquired Salaries' reach. Until next time, thank you.